Hello and g'day. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I tea dye my envelopes so they don't warp while they're drying. If you want to use the envelopes to make little journals and pockets, the last thing you want is for them to turn out all wavy. What happens when you tea dye them, as soon as they get wet, they all wrinkle up and they become quite wavy. So I'm going to show you my method of wetting them and then drying them so they stay nice and flat. In the next video, I'll show you how to make a little journal using these envelopes. These envelopes are all really good quality. When you tea dye an envelope, you're probably better off to have one with a little bit of quality paper to it, a good weight. If you use the really cheap ones, they do work, but not as good as ones that have got a nice paper weight to them. So these ones here with a nice shape are the ones that we're looking for. I tea dyed this first batch using the cheap thin paper envelopes. They warped a lot and wrinkled. This really wasn't worth my time that I spent on them to keep them straight because I just couldn't. This is a classic example of why you wouldn't use thin paper envelopes unless you had no choice and you don't mind these wrinkles. You can make them like this, but they just don't look as good. Have a look at this short demo. These are the thin ones. See how they're soaking up the water straight away as soon as I put it on? You can really tell the difference between a quality one and a thin one. And this is why I suggest that you try and use the better quality ones. See how thin this is? That's ripped already just from me wetting it with the brush. I haven't even touched it. And they didn't hold their colour either. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you these ones, which are a better quality. And I do 4 because I only want 3, but I do 4 just in case one rips and doesn't turn out the best. I know I've always got 3 to lean back on. And if you do 4 at a time, it's much more manageable than to try and do 10 or 12. Okay, so just do as many as you need for your project, and it takes about half an hour. Well, that's if you fast dry them yourself. If you let them air dry, it will take hours. Open up the envelopes. And we'll give them a bit of a wash with the water. If we use a lighter colour to start off with, and then we'll use a darker colour for the second lot of tea water, just to see where the puddles are. The objective is that we can get some real nice dark colour in there. These envelopes are not white to start with. They've already got a creamy colour. So that's going to help me with this method. So we'll give them all a good wet down with the tea bath, and I'll get some good puddles on there. The idea of doing this is so that we get some nice dark lines around these puddles. See how they're handling it a lot better, the better the quality. The ones I showed you here, or that I started to do, they were just ripping at this stage. They were wrinkling and being very hard to deal with. This makes a huge difference to have a better quality paper. And if they start to move around, these puddles where, you know, you want it to be random, but you also want to get something really nice going on there. And of course the front is going to be more your focal point. So we don't want it to puddle in one area too much because it will warp heaps. The paper will definitely change shape more in that puddled area. So we want to move it around. And we can keep controlling that as we go. And the second coat, if you need a second coat, you can come back in and so you don't have to worry about this being the finished colour. So we'll just let that sit for a second just to get some rings, some darker rings around this tea. And I'm going to make a stronger batch of tea just to come in with a second colour to make it even more showy. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, my next stage is I'm going to tip that off because I don't want too much on there. Turn it over. There's no colour barely at all happening on the back. And do the same again. Puddle it up. It's like creating artwork on an envelope, if you like. That's what I like about this sponge, because it will hold, so when you dabble it, it will hold the tea water. I've got my second lot of tea here. I'm making it really, really strong so I get a new colour, and it's going to give me a lovely golden colour. You see the difference there? See that? So we'll have a second colour. It'll be much more interesting. So I'm going to leave that one pooling there in its loveliness. Now get your hairdryer out on a low warm setting. You can let these air dry, but just be aware that these puddles here make warps in the envelope. If you leave them there, they will warp. The hairdryer way controls the drying and keeps them laying flatter. But I'll keep it going for a little while so I can get some rings around the tea water. Can you see the darkness forming around the edge of the tea? If I kept going like that, it would take forever to dry. So I take a lot of the excess tea off. See the difference of how much easier this is to straighten out? I've got way less wrinkles and tears, and you know, it's like behaving itself a lot better than that other one, the cheaper ones were. And it's holding the colour a lot better as well. Okay, so I'm going to get some more colour on this side. Okay, so this one is dry enough for me to leave to continue air drying. Got a tiny little damage there. That's nothing to really worry about. If I stretch it out and dry it, that will almost disappear. Okay, so I can put that one aside and let it continue to air dry. We'll do the next one. Okay, that one's ever so slightly damp, and I've had to hardly do any pulling because of the amount of moisture that I did not put into this envelope. So these two have turned out pretty good. Bring this one over. Get rid of a lot of that off there. You can do either method. You can tip it off and just dry it like that, or you can take a little bit longer and leave the pools on there. This one's got more waves in it because of these pools of tea water. This is envelope number 3. The longer this stays wet, the deeper the waves get. So this is when you need to empty the tea water off and pull them out as you dry them. You'll know how far you can stretch. See that wrinkle there in that puddle? You watch when I stretch it. See how much this paper will give, but it needs to be at the right dryness. If it's too wet, you'll rip it. If it's too dry, it won't do anything. So you've just got to get it on the right angle, hold it out, and then dry it. See that? And then that little wrinkle that was just there is now gone because I've dried it while I stretched it and held it open. I just don't get the same results with an iron. I really don't. I seem to get those big wrinkles when I use an iron. I'm going to leave that like that because I quite like that light-dark variation. Heat that a bit and try and get that smoothed out just that bit more. And that worked. Okay, when I weigh that down ever so slightly for a while, that will lay out flat even more. Now I've got 3. Lucky last. Oh, which style? I think I might just leave that in the middle so it's totally different. You'll know if you need to put the dryer on the inside of the envelope because it'll help it dry from the inside out. Corner to corner, pulling helps a lot. And then end to end, or side to side and end to end. Just stretching to get that big pool out in the center. So it's still there. I've got a little bit more stretching to do. The paper is all but dry, but it's at the perfect stage to stretch. And you can actually see the stretching. And I've just about got that pool out. And that is why you don't leave those big pools of tea in your envelope, because they are harder to get these little trenches of warp out. Heat it up and press it down. That gone. So they're ready now to weigh down. We've got our 4 variation tea dyed envelopes. They all look pretty good. They are much better than the cheaper variety. Having the second colour of tea has definitely worked really well. Like these ones here, being so cheap, this one started to peel, the paper come off. A lot of wrinkling, and I found it really hard to pull the paper back into shape. This one here, look at that. There is no comparison between the quality of these. I hardly had to work on these at all, but look at these. So there's your difference between using a fairly good quality paper and a cheap paper. You know, like even this little single one in the first batch I done is a better quality, and it turned out quite straight in comparison to these ones. I can still use these. I'll still use these in a project, but they'll need a lot of covering up on them. Whereas these will be perfect for me to use in the next project that I'm going to show you on how to make a little journal using these envelopes. The next step we need to do is weigh them down. So we're going to have these here. I'm going to put that one at the bottom just to give a bit of a base on that. I'm going to put that on top. Actually, I might put the flatter ones on top. These ones are the flatter ones, and then these here. So I've got my group together. I'm going to clear up my tea dye on the fly padding and get my weights out, which are just a bunch of ceramic tiles, and weigh them down and leave them overnight. Now I've taken my little bundle of envelopes out from underneath the weights. I left them overnight because it was too late for me to film again. So they have been sitting under the weight all night. This envelope here has turned out really good. I can use that one. These are the 4 that I want to use for my project. So I've made a spare, or I can use it to make 4 pages. Now they turned out perfect. They're really, really straight. There's that one. And that one. And that one. And the 2 colours of tea actually works quite well too, if you could be bothered. These ones here, these are the first batch I made to show you the difference between the quality of the two, the colour and the way the paper behaves. This one here, when I tried to straighten it with my fingers, the paper started peeling. It was just peeling, and it didn't hold together real well at all, and you could see it starting to do the same on the back. I will be able to use these in something. These are the worst. These were the worst quality, the thinnest paper, and they by far turned out the worst. And creases. If you don't mind the wrinkles and the creases, if you think that adds to your work, you can use these. Not a problem. I avoid them. I really do. I'd rather have that. But the amount of wrinkles, no matter how much I pulled and stretched, I could not get them out. And I find when you iron them, that actually makes them worse. You might have better luck than me. Everyone's method is different. So there's our nice flat tea-dyed envelopes. I've got quite a little stash here now I can make things out of. I'm pretty happy that I've got some sitting here ready to go, and I'll show you exactly what I'm going to do with these in another video. I'm Donna. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.